Now we would understand the evolution of the internet. The evolution of the internet dawned in the 1960s during the nuclear attack. The prime motive of an internet connection was to secure an effective communication network even at the time missiles attack, when all other modes of communication would be lost. Besides, the internet would also assist in sharing data, without which information would be required to be copied into some other medium such as a floppy. The World Wide Web. The World Wide Web, which is also known as the WWW, is considered as the backbone of the internet and is in turn dependent on the Hypertext Transfer Protocol, or the HTTP, which assists the user to browse the web page. Hence, while it is difficult to each and every web address, in order to be able to browse the same, the HTTP assists in relocating the user to the web page. For this, all the user must do is type the sort of document the user seeks to view. The HTTP will then redirect the user to the web page on the website or the WWW. Internet protocols. As we are aware, the use of internet facilitates the transfer of data from one website to another. For instance, if one wants to purchase certain goods, let us say an electronic appliance, and wants to visit the online page, the internet protocol assists the browser to do so by transferring the data from one's computer to another. For such activities, the internet is regulated by a large number of protocols. The TCP/IP. The TCP/IP, or the Transfer Control Protocol Internet Protocol, is part of the protocol suite and assists in transmission of data on the internet. Hence, the TCP/IP aids and assists in surfing the internet, sending and receiving emails, and transferring data, to name a few. The STMP. The STMP, or Standard Mail Transfer Protocol, is a protocol to send and receive mails over the internet. In other words, whenever the user of the internet seeks to send a mail to a certain other person, he or she must type the email address. Upon clicking send, the STMP facilitates the transmission of mails. The Internet Protocol Address. The Internet Protocol Address, or the IP address, is that every computer that uses the internet has an individual Internet Protocol address, which is made up of 4 octets, with each octet numbered between 0 to 255. For instance, 173.194.70.99 is the IP address of Google. Hence, if one enters http://173.194.70.99 in the toolbar, he or she will be relocated to www.google.com. The domain name. Simply put, a domain name system is a part of the Internet Protocol in which the individual domains names are assigned to each website over the internet. The prime logic behind the DNS is because it is evidently difficult to remember the IP address for each and every website one seeks to use. Hence, remembering a domain name is obviously easier. Now we would understand what we have explained in this module. The laws regulating cyberspace would regulate not merely stand-alone computers, but also the internet. Hence, for example, in the event there has been a cybercrime committed via the internet by, let us say, the unauthorized access to email by one person, then the same would be within the domain of cyber laws. Also, for instance, in case of a domain name, if a person unlawfully violates the trademark of a registered DNS, then such person's act would be a violation of cyber law. In such a scenario, even though a person committing the wrongful act is not making use of the aggrieved person's computers and is merely committing the wrongful acts via the internet, the wrongdoer is still liable for the provisions of cyber law. Against this backdrop, the laws regulating cyberspace would regulate not merely standalone computers, but also the internet. Hence, for example, in event there has been a cybercrime committed via the internet by, let us say, the unauthorized access to email by one person, then the same would be within the domain of cyber laws. Also, for instance, in case a domain name, if a person unlawfully violates the trademark of a registered DNS, then such person's act would be a violation of cyber law. In such a scenario, even though a person committing the wrongful act is not making use of the aggrieved person's computer and is merely committing the wrongful acts via the internet, the wrongdoer is still liable under the provisions of cyber law. Against this, we have understood what is the jurisprudence and scope of cyber laws. We saw that cyber laws consist of mainly 5 generations of computers. So, the first generation began with the use of vacuum tubes. The second generation replaced vacuum tubes with transistors. The third generation replaced transistors with semiconductor chips. The fourth generation mainly used integrators, which were either large scale integrators, ultra large scale, or very large scale integrators. We saw that the evolution of computer is marked with 5 generations of computers. The first generation was marked with the use of vacuum tubes, the second generation with transistors, the third generation replaced transistors with semiconductor chips, the fourth generation used integrators, which were either large scale, very large scale, or ultra large scale integrators, and the fifth generation is the current era, which is primarily the use of smartphones. Hence, we also saw that primarily a computer includes the hardware, software, the input and output devices, the CPU, the ALU or the arithmetic logic unit, and also the random access memory and read only memory. Against this, we also understood the legal aspects of the definition of a computer, which are defined by virtue of the Information Technology Act 2000 by virtue of section 2 clause 1 subclause I, and we also understood the meaning of data by virtue of section 2 clause I clause O of the IT Act 2000. We also understood what a computer function is by virtue of section 2 clause 1 subclause U of the IT Act 2000.